This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. So with all the hubbub around these two invisible children seeing their grandfather, King Charles, on Friday, which I refuse to believe until I see actual evidence, we have totally ignored and missed this article that was written by Camilla Tominey. This is the same article where Camilla Tominey had confirmed the king had met these two invisible children and Harry and Meghan. Now, as I've shown everybody and proven that when this was published at 2:55 p.m., the king and Prince Harry would not have been able to have gotten together to have this little get-together with the invisible children. It would have been impossible. And I don't need to belabor this point, given that there are no photos being released and we're supposed to just trust what the media is telling us. I'm sorry, we've already been there, done that, and I'm not a sucker. And at this point, there is zero reason to trust anything that's coming out of these journalists' mouths. That's all I can say. But what I want to cover today is the actual article, because after this paragraph, I didn't bother to read the rest of it. It's only today that I've had the chance to go through it, and I think it's worth sharing, considering that the news had been dominated with this bullshit, that it's completely knocked this court case off the headlines. So let's go ahead and dig into it. I'm not going to go ahead and read the first paragraph again, but Camilla Tominey continues on by saying, Meghan did not attend yesterday's Invictus Games event with her husband at Birmingham as originally planned. Buckingham Palace insists no imagery will be released of the royal reconciliation, but don't be surprised if carefully curated footage eventually emerges of the family of four, perhaps visiting Princess Diana's grave at Althorpe, the Spencer family seat. Now, if I had to guess, we're going to see some, if we do see any kind of footage, probably of rented children, maybe child actors. Whatever is going on with Harry and Meghan is beyond weird that it's not normal. I think we all are way past knowing that something is definitely up here. The Sussexes thrive on drama. It's the only real currency they have left, which goes some way to explaining Harry's endless will he, won't he, Buckingham Palace invitation saga. I wouldn't be surprised if behind-the-scenes footage is already being shot to appear on a television near you in the not-too-distant future. You know, the thing that gets me about Harry and Meghan is that anything that comes up about these two is never straightforward. I mean, just think back over the last 10 years, how many times where things are just so murky and just didn't make any kind of sense. And at this point in the game, it's got to be deliberate. And that's the thing that irritates me the most, is the constant manipulation and deception and lying, purposely to provoke, incite, gaslight, divide, confuse, you name it. It's purposely being done to irritate people. And I just don't understand how people don't see that it's deliberate and that the palace is also too involved with it. Anyway, continuing on. Having been on the receiving end of Harry and Meghan's truth, I admit to feeling rather vindicated following Mr. Justice Nicklon's judgment in the prince's case against Associated Newspapers, dismissing all 97 claims made by 7 claimants, including Harry, Sir Elton John, and Liz Hurley, that the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday had carried out unlawful information gathering against them between the late 1990s and 2015. The judge was unequivocal. In his devastating 436-page ruling, he rejected not only the most lurid accusations, but also concluded that the claimants had failed to prove any unlawful activity at all, accepting the denials of Associated Newspaper journalists who gave lawful explanations for the sourcing of the disputed articles and incidents. He added, suspicion, even understandable suspicion, is not proof. What the judgment effectively said is that feelings are not facts. There is only ever one version of the truth, the one that can be proved with evidence. The court defeat leaves Harry et al. Potentially facing a £50 million legal bill, which may or may not be covered by the estate of Max Mosley, a man with a well-documented history of fascist politics and orgies. But the reputational cost for the Sussexes could be even greater. The judgment drives a coach and horses through their carefully cultivated narrative of victimhood. Harry has long maintained that he and Meghan were hounded in the same way his late mother was. During the trial earlier this year, he became emotional while describing the impact of the coverage on those closest to him, saying Associated newspapers had made Meghan's life an absolute misery. So why then did the couple's media team allegedly provide Charlotte Griffiths, editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, with details of a meeting between Sussex representatives and a senior royal aide in 2025? Let's pause there for a second. Why the need to use the word allegedly now? Didn't Charlotte Griffiths come out and write that in her piece? That word needs to be removed. It's not allegedly. Charlotte Griffiths wrote that it happened. So until further notice, then the Sussexes didn't allegedly do this. They did it. Griffiths says a close advisor arranged lunch with her at the Ivy in London during the summer of that year. She maintains information shared there led to several stories about the couple, including front-page reports suggesting efforts were underway to repair relations with King Charles. If true, Harry and Meghan were doing precisely what they accuse others of doing, briefing the press. What do you mean, if true? Charlotte Griffiths put this out. Are we not to trust Charlotte Griffiths? I mean, we all know that Harry and Meghan do it. There have been several other instances where Harry and Meghan have leaked to the media and it had been exposed. So what do you mean, if true? This is the issue that I have with these journalists. They're constantly tiptoeing around accusing Harry and Meghan of what they legitimately have been doing. And that is lying. Then there was last week's accommodation saga. How exactly were reporters learning about the rescinded palace invitations if not from Sussex sources? This from a prince who once grandly told his ITV chum Tom Bradby that members of the royal family got into bed with the devil if they tipped off the media to rehabilitate their image. Griffith's evidence also seems to suggest another uncomfortable inconsistency. Harry has long claimed to have little to do with journalists, yet the trial revealed flirtatious Facebook messages exchanged with Griffiths in 2011 and 2012, referring to a hedonistic weekend spent with Harry and his friends. In those messages, Harry happily disclosed personal details, including that he was stuck in Cornwall doing army stuff. Again, Harry's words to Bradby come back to haunt him. If you need to do that, or you want to do that, you chose to do that. Well, that is a choice, he explained. Yes, Harry, if only you'd taken your own advice. As I recall, when he wasn't complaining about invasions of privacy, he and his friends were voluntarily sharing extraordinary amounts of their lives on public social media. They also kept returning to the same London nightclubs, Bougie, Amica, and others, only to express outrage when photographers captured them stumbling out in the early hours. In Spare, Harry never named me but described me as someone who always made me ill, adding, she'd always got stuff wrong. In reality, I got two rather significant stories right. First, that he was dating Meghan Markle, an exclusive I broke in October of 2016, and second, that there had been an altercation between Meghan and Kate during a bridesmaid dress fitting that left Kate in tears. Until that second story, I had enjoyed a perfectly good working relationship with Harry. Even after revealing his romance with the American actress, he personally invited me to cover parts of his Caribbean tour that weren't open to other journalists. The truth, the whole truth, not the Sussexes' version of it, is that they have always been entirely comfortable with publicity, provided it is flattering. Write a negative headline, even an accurate one, and suddenly it becomes a media witch hunt. The reality was summed up perfectly by Paul Dacra, editor-in-chief of Associated Newspapers, after the verdict, which echoed South Park's now infamous World Privacy Tour parody about the couple. There isn't a laundry in the cosmos big enough to wash all the dirty linen he has aired about his own family. For him to complain about his privacy being invaded takes not just the biscuit, but the whole tin. He has a point. Harry and Meghan haven't simply aired their family's private business without offering anyone a right of reply. They have turned it into a lucrative business model. And they will continue to do so, because strip away the grievance, the victimhood, and the drama, and what remains? A couple of former royals with a fading brand. That surely is the truth. Is it really, though? Now, I say that because when we look at Camilla Tominey and her interesting resume, did you guys know that she started out with NBC? Yes, the same NBC over here in the US that is hard left, pushing woke nonsense. When we look at Camilla Tominey's role in this whole saga, she's the one that really kicked this all off by vomiting Meghan Markle onto the global stage by announcing her and Prince Harry were dating. And then she also had a role in the story breaking about Meghan making Catherine cry. This is what really kicked off this so-called polarity that Meghan is very much familiar with, and this feud with Catherine, or alleged feud with Catherine. When we look back at what exactly happened there, this was really the first disinformation campaign that they were testing on all of us, along with Meghan's Megnancy, which also was a big disinformation campaign. Back in 2018, this was really the foundation of going after people and getting them canceled and shut down. So it's interesting that Camilla Tominey is responsible for one of the bigger stories pertaining to Harry and Meghan's black operations. And I'm going to call it black operations because what we've been told is not the truth. And I think all of us can see that. It's interesting, in this article, she makes no mention of the death threats that she received from Harry and Meghan's so-called Sussex squad, or Harry's people. That would have been very relevant to talk about here, since Gavin Burrows equally had been threatened by Harry's team. But she makes no mention of it. In fact, have you noticed that none of these journalists ever talk about this online militia that still exists and still going after people? Like, one would think, if we were dealing with real journalists, that one of them would have brought up Harry and Meghan being dangerous to be around the monarch because of this Sussex squad. But no, we're just going along with the narrative of, oh, the king wants to be reunited with his family because blood is blood, blah, 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 right? No. This just goes to show even more evidence that this whole thing had been one big circle jerk. It really has been. It's interesting when you go back and you look at Camilla Tominey's engagement with the Sussex squad. Well, not actual engagement, but the narrative that was being crafted around her for being the journalist and reporting that Meghan made Kate cry. And yeah, there was an onslaught of attacks. But what if that was all planned? What if that was all part of getting everybody in line? When you look at this post back from 2021, Camilla Tominey was speaking the same language of people who were trying to shut down voices. We must call out online hate when we see it, which is why I'm posting this death threat sent to my website this morning in the name of Harry and Meghan fandom. Never be cowed by these abject hypocrites. Fight for the right to disagree agreeably. Hashtag stop online hate. Like, why didn't Camilla Tominey raise this point in this recent article? Why haven't anybody talked about Harry and Meghan's militia that they have going after people to silence voices? Sure, Harry and Meghan want to shut down free speech, not just the press, but they want to shut down all of our speeches. So if now the conversation has turned to Harry wanting to shut down freedom of press, why are they ignoring that Harry and Meghan in general have been trying to shut down free speech in general overall? Why is it that none of these journalists want to touch that? This would have been a perfect opportunity to do so, Camilla. Remember all of these documentaries that I showed you that have been cranked out back to back for a year and a half, ending at the end of last year? Well, Camilla Tominey is in a good majority of them, helping to tell the narrative and story, and never once does she ever talk about the abuse that she's faced from Harry and Meghan's so-called fans. Never once. One would think she would have, because back in 2021, she made a big deal about it. during a time when online hate was being fought by these advocates and social justice warriors who were trying to stop mis and disinformation. In this article, what I find very interesting is this subtitle: I've covered elections and extremism, but nothing compares to the vitriol I've received since I started writing about the Sussexes. Well, hold on a second. She was working for NBC. Remember what I said earlier about NBC? And she covered elections. Now, what have I told you about Harry and Meghan coming over here and leading up to the 2020 election? How interesting that Camilla Tominey was focused on political stuff and then switched over to writing about Harry and Meghan. Honestly, I don't trust any of these journalists as far as I can see them. Because you never know, was she a part of this whole plan, this whole scam, and now they're trying to make it look like, oh, well, Harry and Meghan are just petulant children who can't take criticism, ignoring completely the involvement that they've had here with some serious players that have affected this country. The biggest thing that Camilla Tominey, as well as these other journalists, have missed in feeling vindicated from this case is that Prince Harry accused the British media of being racist. And that was the big thing that was going on back in 2021 when Camilla Tominey wrote this article. So why not mention it? Because back in 2021, this was your position. Accusations of racism have long been leveled against anyone who has dared write less than undiluted praise of Harry and Meghan. But even I have been taken aback by the vitriol on social media in the wake of the couple's televised 2-hour talkathon in which they branded both the royal family and the British press racist while complaining about their almost unsurvivable multimillionaire lives at the hands of the evil monarchy. And all while the rest of the UK were losing their loved ones and livelihoods in a global pandemic. Having covered Brexit, general elections, and stories about Islamic extremism, I've grown used to being sprayed with viral vomit on a fairly regular basis. But when you've got complete strangers trolling your best friend's Instagram feed by association, that's Britney Spears' level of toxic. Having a hind thicker than a rhino's, it wasn't the repeated references to my being a total C that particularly bothered me, nor even the suggestion that I should have my 3 children put up for adoption. At one point, someone even said it would be a good idea for me to drink myself to death like my mother, about whose chronic alcoholism I've written extensively. No, what really got me was the appalling spelling and grammar. I mean, if you're going to hurl insults, at least have the decency to get my name right. Yet, in order to understand just how it has come to pass that so-called hashtag Sussex squatters think nothing of branding all royal correspondents white supremacists, regardless of who they write for, or sending hate mail to our email addresses, offices, and in some cases, even our homes. It's worth briefly going back to when I first broke the story that Prince Harry was dating an American actor in the Sunday Express on October 31st, 2016. Headline, Royal World Exclusive, Harry's Secret Romance with TV Star. The splash revealed how the popular prince was secretly dating a stunning U.S. actress, model, and human rights campaigner. What's interesting with Camilla, every time she writes a piece about Harry and Meghan, she's always bringing up the fact that she is the one who broke the story about Harry and Meghan dating. Now, of course, these journalists never reveal their sources, but it would be interesting to know how Camilla Tominey found out. Who was the one that told her? If I had to guess, it was Meghan. This goes on to say, despite my now apparently being on par with the Ku Klux Klan for failing to acknowledge Meghan as the next Messiah, it was actually not until the 15th paragraph of that original article that the confident and intelligent Northwestern University graduate was described as the daughter of an African American mother and a father of Dutch and Irish descent. The online hostility began bubbling up about 8 days after that first story when Harry's then communications secretary, Jason Knopf, issued an unprecedented statement accusing the media of crossing the line. His girlfriend, Meghan Markle, has been subject to a wave of abuse and harassment. It read referencing a smear on the front page of a national newspaper, the racial undertones of comment pieces, and the outright sexism and racism of social media trolls and web article comments. So now revisiting this is actually interesting because I didn't realize that back in 2016 when Harry issued this statement from Buckingham Palace, it was Jason Knopf who was the one who was behind it. Now the reason why I'm pointing this out is because as time goes on, we're seeing how the narrative is shifting and history is being rewritten. I know that it's small, but it matters because now when people tell this story and they talk about the beginnings of what went down and Harry and this letter, they never mention that it was Jason Knopf who was the one that helped put it together and put it out on Election Day in 2016. And quelle surprise that the royal family removed this letter quietly from their website. No longer can be found as an official Buckingham Palace statement that went out. So you see what's going on here. They are slowly, quietly erasing these attempts at subversion. I think that being ignored in itself should tell everybody what is going on here and how hard these journalists are trying to spin this image of Harry and Meghan are just losers who ran out of money. Everything that they tried to do over here has failed, and now they have to go back, not recognizing or not acknowledging what they really have been doing over here. You notice it's missing in every single story. Nobody is talking about it. So I asked this question, why? Why is nobody talking about this? And I think many of you understand what that answer is. And given that the palace has blessed this bullshit story about Harry and Meghan meeting with the king and the two invisible children, I think you see what's going on here. I think you understand what I've been trying to tell you these past 5 years or the last several years, that none of this should be believed. None of it. Now, I'm not saying that what Camilla Tominey is writing in this article doesn't have any weight to it. What I'm pointing out here is her role in this saga from the very beginning over the course of 10 years. And the very specific wording that she used in this article, like allegedly, or if we are to believe, no, you've been around for the last 10 years. Why are you still tiptoeing around certain things? And part of me feels like all of this is part of guiding the public down this path and distancing away from what Harry and Meghan really were here doing. And that's the one thing that none of these journalists are touching. Well, I wouldn't call them journalists, but propagandists that are being told by the palace and by Harry and Meghan's PR teams on what they can talk about. I think it's clear that talking about January 6th is a no-go, as well as the censorship stuff. Just seems like those are two topics that are off limits. You know, it really has been interesting watching the media unfold over the last several days, from the time it was announced that Harry lost his court case to then all of a sudden now being saturated everywhere about this alleged meeting that happened with the king and his two invisible grandkids. It doesn't take a genius to understand what happened here. And here's the thing. I really don't care what other journalists and commentators are saying about this alleged meeting. I don't believe it happened based off of the limited information that we have here. And I think everybody is entitled to come to their own conclusion. And mine is, no, I don't buy it. Just because someone says so doesn't mean that it's true. How many times have we fallen into that trap and we still haven't learned yet? Anyhow, that's all I have for you today. Just a real quick, light video. Thought I would share it with everybody. Let me know your thoughts below on how you feel about Camilla Tominey. Do you get the same vibe that I'm getting? Or do you think that she is a trustworthy, honest journalist? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye! It was such a fraud.